Are you coming? Are you coming up? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started. So if anybody's in the hallway, you guys can come on and make your way in. Hope everyone is feeling great tonight. I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming in person and our virtual audience. My name is Monet Easley Smalls, and I'm your Community Engagement Liaison for District 11. I am joined today by my colleagues and of the engagement team, leadership, and our PM for the project, as well as our contractors tonight. Whether you are hearing about the Pratt Street intersection project for the very first time, or if you're here to gain more insight, you are in the right place. Our PM Ravic will lead the presentation, and I will be close by to assist with the Q&A portion. I would ask that when we get to the Q&A portion that you would come up to the microphone here and you would be able to ask your questions at that time. For those of you that are joining us online, please enter your questions via the chat and we will be sure to respond. Just one housekeeping thing before we get started. In case you are looking for the restrooms, they are to my right. And let's have a good time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monet, for that introduction. Hopefully everyone is doing good tonight, and thank you for your time. So, as she stated, my name is Ravic Miller. I am the PM for the Inner Harbor Intersection Improvements and Bikeway Finding Signage Project, TR 17303. So we're going to get started. Again, Inner Harbor Intersection Improvements. The purpose of this project is to enhance pedestrian safety and accessibility, in addition to upgrading key intersections for better urban mobility. The goals of this project is to improve the pedestrian safety, support ADA compliance, in addition to promoting accessibility and wayfinding through signage. So the three locations of the Inner Harbor intersection improvements that we focused on were Pratt Light, Pratt Calvert, and Pratt at President Street. And this is just an aerial view of those locations. Now, the existing conditions that we focused on and with this project will basically address crosswalks, which are faded to non-existent. The wayfinding signage is very plain and mundane, not very informative. And also the ADA compliance, which things are somewhat compliant, but we're bringing them to the standards when everything was approved. So the key improvements that we're touching on: high visibility, continental style crosswalks, ADA compliant pedestrian ramps, APS and CPS countdown pedestrian signals, new pedestrian signal conduit installation, because with the addition of the APS and CPS and how old the harbor is, we realize that new conduit is needed based on the fact that what's there now is basically at capacity. Also, a key improvement we're doing are the bike and pedestrian wayfinding signage that will be implemented as well. This is just an overview of those three locations with everything incorporated, such as the crosswalks, the ramps, and so forth. Here we have a rendering of the northwest corner at Pratt and President, where you have the crosswalks in place, as well as the ramps, in addition to the pedestrian signals. And this should also be incorporated with our improvements that we're aiming for. Now here we have a aerial overview map of the wayfinding signage locations, which it starts from Light and it spans down to approximately Marketplace. And as you can see with the signage, compared to what we have now, it's more informative, bold, should catch the eye of tourists, visitors, pedestrians, and so forth. Now, construction timeline and impacts. So we're looking at start of late spring of 2025. Duration of construction will be approximately 8 to 9 months, and the work hours are from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. nighttime. We figure this would better help minimize any disruption. And as far as the impacts go, which was also to help minimize disruption, we're looking at least 2 lanes at most for lane closures. Now, community engagement. Now, flyers have been and are being passed out to local businesses. The stakeholder meeting, which we are here today for, as well as meeting with other important stakeholders, which has been taking place. Prior to construction, there will be early notice to affected residents and businesses, and your community liaisons for District 11, Ms. Monet Easley Smalls, and District 12, Ms. Chiquetta Wallace. Any questions that you may have, you can direct those to our Streets of Baltimore site /in the harbor. And before I wrap this up, we did receive some questions earlier today, and I'm going to kind of go off script and address some of those now. So one of the questions was in regard to the ramp design specifics. What specific changes are being made to the pedestrian ramp design at each intersection? And are any ramps being widened or reduced in size? If so, why? So basically, these pedestrian ramps are being upgraded to meet ADA standards, and this would include installing proper slopes, detectable warning surfaces, and improving the landings. Some ramps may appear slightly wider or narrow, but the adjustments are made to optimize space for new pedestrian safety features, such as the pedestrian signals, the APS, CPS signals, and also to improve pedestrian flow within the available sidewalk area. Question 2 that we received earlier today. Purpose of the reconstruction. What is the primary purpose of reconstructing the ramps and their dimensions appearing mostly unchanged? So though the ramps seem or look unchanged, the reconstruction ensures compliance with federal standards when all of this was approved, in addition to correcting the slopes, alignments, and surface issues. The upgrades make the ramps safer and easier to navigate, especially for those with visual impairments and those who may have wheelchairs, strollers, etc. Signal improvements. Question 3. What signal improvements are being implemented as part of this project? How do these signal changes enhance safety or accessibility? So with these new signals, they have 16-inch LED countdown timers, the installation of audible and countdown pedestrian signals to assist all users. The upgraded push button heights are accessible and improving accessibility. The countdown signals will also show how much time remains to cross the street. Audible features help the visually impaired to know when it's safe to cross. And the improved signal layout helps kind of reduce confusion and create more accessibility for pedestrians. Question 4, impact on pedestrian density. In pedestrian dense areas, why do some ramps appear to be shrinking in size? How does this align with accessibility and pedestrian flow goals? So in high traffic areas, reduction will allow better placement of signals, poles, and pedestrian refuge spaces without obstructing pedestrian flow. This aligns with goals of all ramps continuing to meet ADA requirements to ensure safety and easy use. Question 5 that we received, wayfinding and modal separation. How is the project addressing wayfinding to pedestrians and cyclists, particularly for the Jones Falls Trail? Are there risks of increased confusion between bike and pedestrian paths? So new directional signage, it's being installed to guide pedestrians and cyclists to key destinations such as the Jones Falls Trail in the harbor and other surrounding areas. The pavement markings and signage improvements, it shall reduce any confusion and improve separation between pedestrians and bike paths. Question 6 that we received, visual communication. The before and after renderings show minimal visual change. Can you walk through what specific functional improvements are not visible but are significant? Though the visible changes may not seem significant, we are upgrading underground wiring and conduit systems to support a more reliable traffic and pedestrian signal operation. The thermoplastic crosswalk markings will be for better visibility and long-term use, and a safer, much flatter pedestrian curb ramp is also helping us meet the federal standards when everything was approved. Question 7, project justification. How is this investment justified in terms of cost benefit, especially when public perception sees it as minimal change? How does the project prioritize or address the big problems mentioned in community feedback? So the investment for this project is justified because it meets federal standards when this was approved with ADA compliance, and it will reduce any type of liability that the city may face with the hope of ensuring eligibility for future funding and investments. And also with these improvements, it will enhance safety for all users, pedestrians, cyclists, et cetera, and those with disabilities. Now I will open the floor up for any questions online and here in person that anyone may have.
Good evening, everybody here and online. I'm Jana Brooks with Visit Baltimore, and I have 2 questions, if that's okay. One about one specific event, the Maryland Cycling Classic. That's the weekend after Labor Day. I know about your time frame, also know about weather and other things that will impede the project. Do you foresee that event being an issue that we should concern ourselves with?
No, I don't see an issue with that event, especially since we're working at night with 9 hours. So I really don't see an issue with that at all. I mean, of course, there may be like setup and everything that takes place prior to with that, but I'm sure there will be communication, especially with our right-of-way section folks, to keep us abreast as to, you know, what's happening with all the events, games and so forth. We'll act accordingly.
Okay. And the second question, what I'm trying to rephrase the question that's being asked of me. So do you have any verbiage or any idea of how we can tell our visitors what to expect when they're moving around? Understanding that things are happening at night, but will there be, I don't know, caution signage? Like what kind of visual things should we tell our people that are moving from hotels to convention center, et cetera?
We will work with the contractor as well as right-of-way folks with DOT to where we'll have things set up in place to kind of help with the flow of traffic, especially for pedestrians. Not just vehicular, but we are working on these ramps and everything. So we're going to make sure that the footways are accessible. I mean, even if we're working on one side, probably have folks cross to the other and proceed with where they're heading in their destinations.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Leslie
Hi, Ms.
from the
Leslie.
Baltimore Inner Harbor.
How are you?
I have been a shop owner there for 30 years. I came in with Rouse, GGP, and now a wonderful, wonderful team. David Bramblin owns the Inner Harbor. I have had stores inside the pavilion and kiosks on the outside of the pavilion. And because I have been there a long time, I see everything. I'm out there for 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And do we have a problem with the bicycles on the red brick? It is awful. When I first came to the Inner Harbor, there was no bike riding after 10 a.m. But somebody changed it, and I would like it to be changed back to no bike riding on our red brick after 10 a.m. We have a bike lane in front of the Cheesecake Factory, and the mayors and all the officials made it, and it's probably 10 miles long, and it accommodates the bicycles, the scooters, the people that deliver food, okay? But they changed it in the back of the Cheesecake Factory where the baby strollers, the wheelchairs, and our pedestrians, our tourist walks. There is not enough room and it's not safe. Motorcycles, bicycles, powered bicycles, and of course, the people that raise their bicycles up in the air and they hit the people deliberately. Now, reading some law books, I understand it's against the law to do wheelies in Baltimore City. And that's all we got. They hit people, they scare people to death. So today, I am asking, please put a no bike riding behind the Cheesecake Factory on our red brick facing the Inner Harbor, because less than 30 feet away in front of the Cheesecake Factory, Pratt Street, we have a huge bicycle lane. And that's my proposal today.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure me and as well as other DOT staff that are here this evening will take that into consideration and talk, probably bring this up with our transit folks just to see what's feasible.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So
My name is Tola Abu. Last year, I was in Japan, and they had a lot of infrastructure for their biking. Specifically, one I saw that I think could be used in Baltimore City is a locked bike parking lot where you can wheel your bike in to a slot, lock the wheel, pay a small fee, and then come back at a later time and then retrieve your bike. Do any of those currently exist downtown? And would that be considered with the new developments along Pratt Street?
So in that regard, I'm totally not sure. That's something that we could probably get back to you on. And by all means, that question, if you could, I'll direct you to the streetsofbaltimore.com/in harbor. Please send that question and we could probably address it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to read an online question. The signals that have been used in the past have had the capability to audibly count down as well as visually, although to my knowledge, it has never been implemented. Will it be implemented with these, or will the audible signals only indicate that it is safe to walk with beeps? If the current plan is beeps only, I would like to discuss further with the city as a representative of the National Federation of the Blind.
No, this particular project will have the audible and countdown signals.
Hi, I'm Luke Ziegler. I live in Fed Hill. Anyway, I guess what I was wondering is that obviously there's a lot of change going on with like Harbor Place, broader discussions around changing the amount of pedestrian space, road space, and potentially even light rail. But I guess my question is BCDOT working to make sure there isn't redundancy? So like if the intersection is redone, but then they're going to redo the whole pedestrian space anyway, I guess what kind of discussions and planning are you all doing to make sure that you aren't improving the intersection and then you end up having to rip up a bunch of it anyway because there's changes being made? Are y'all in discussions about that? What are the plans for that, since it's still a little up in the air?
Yeah, to my knowledge, and of course we can find this out, but to my knowledge, these improvements we're making will be for us. And I think we have someone who can address from DOT traffic as well.
Hey folks, Clea Baumhofer, Chief of Traffic Engineering here. That is a great question, but for these improvements, we're seeing these as an immediate need, and given that the longer term plans are still under development, we're moving these particular safety and ADA improvements forward now. There is a possibility that there will be more major reconfiguration of these intersections in the future, but given that these are valuable interim, they could be interim improvements that will benefit everyone in the immediate term, we're moving the project forward. Thanks.
So question 2 for online, how does this mesh with the plans for Pratt Street presented by the developer of the Harbor Place renovation?
So this kind of falls in line with those adjustments as far as enhancing pedestrian safety and mobility within the urban environment. We are in talks with the mayor's office, especially as these plans develop. But as far as I know, these plans do fall in line with that.
Hi, I am Brandon Canoy. I am a downtown resident, and I am usually biking or walking down through and along Pratt Street, if not weekly, daily. And I just wanted to ask why the proposal, especially along the intersection of Pratt Street and Calvert, why that is proposing to reduce the level of service design for pedestrian throughput, because right now it is a full depressed radius curb, but what is currently proposed is just a diagonal ramp instead of a higher quality, higher level of service directional ramp. And I'm happy to take that question sitting down, but I just wanted to bring that up and ask why that is, especially if we're going to be spending all this money. Why not raise the level of service? Because there are often pedestrian and bicycle conflicts with the current angled design that are much less evident with a full depressed curb or directional ramps. So thank you.
Thank you. When this project was being designed, we at the time were looking at the amount of just foot traffic and how these ramps could better allow pedestrians to cross, whereas I understand the directional ramp situation, but at the time when this was approved and seeing how we have the pedestrian poles in place, that may have gave us some restrictions to where we could just do the diagonal ramps with within that location.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carson Drew, and first of all, I want to say I appreciate the framing of this project. I think bicycle and pedestrian improvements are very important for the city and in many places very much needed. I also want to just make my point, maybe it's a question as well. The wayfinding signs in this project, particularly as we get towards the eastern end of the cycle track, there's not a lot of separation between the cycle track and the sidewalk. I think that adds confusion there and makes it challenging. Like there might be people walking in the cycle track, and then that forces people to bike on the sidewalk or vice versa. It's more challenging. So I'm curious if there's a way to add signs or make the design better to reduce those conflicts.
Well, I would say in the case of this particular project, I mean, we could address what we have funding for. Now, as far as to look beyond this scope, that maybe could be something done with a later task or project within DOT.
At this time, we want to invite one of our online guests, Chris, to further explain his question.
Thanks very much, Mona and everybody. So my question about the audible signals, and thank you for including them, but what I was specifically trying to ask is this. The signals that I have seen can either speak or beep or do some combination of both. And for example, when they speak, they say something like, wait, and then they will say the walk light to cross Pratt Street is on or whatever, and then they'll beep to indicate that as well. They can also be programmed to count down verbally. And you know, so that they're counting down the time 30, 29, 28, 27. Or I think there may be a tone that they can use to do that too, but I don't know how it's differentiated. The speaking would be better. And really the only advantage that I see as a blind pedestrian that these audible pedestrian signals can give us as blind people, because what we normally do is listen to traffic, because most intersections in the city either don't have these or they're not working or whatever. The only really thing that really gives us equal access is that countdown, because you can tell us that it's safe to cross with a beep signal, but we don't know how much time we have. And so what winds up happening is we wait on the curb until a few traffic cycles have passed So what I'm asking is, are these the same signals that the city has been using in the past? Or are they new ones? If they are the old ones, or if they are the same ones, they can be programmed to count down. And if they are new ones, they hopefully should be able to be programmed to count down.
Yeah, so I'll say they should be, but I'll definitely can get back to you on that. And if you could please provide that question via the streetsofbaltimore.com/Inner Harbor site, we could definitely get that addressed for you.
Sure will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have another question online. This question is, I am with the National Aquarium and we do host night events. Do you anticipate difficulty for vendors to access our property in the evenings? We just want to communicate appropriately with them.
No, I don't see an issue with that. As long as we have good communication, you informing DOT and us being in touch with our right-of-way folks and those in regards of special events, we could definitely coordinate and make sure, you know, you're abreast as to what construction or what's happening.
All right, Jana Brooks, Visit Baltimore again. Do you have any idea of the phasing? Like, are you going east to west, one side versus the north sidewalk and the south? Any thoughts on that yet, or too soon?
Too soon. We do have after this week, we do have a pre-construction meeting where we'll talk with the contractors and we can probably get a better idea from them what their game plan is.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. I cannot see the renderings, but how will this improve pedestrian crossing at Pratt and President? Currently, if I am walking east on north side of Pratt, once I get to President Street, there is not enough time to cross the street before motorists traveling east and turning to travel north begin to turn at full speed. The same with the opposite side of the street. It takes 2 light cycles for the pedestrian to safely cross Pratt and President in either direction.
So I'm gonna defer that to Ms. Clea Baumhofer and from our traffic division.
Sure, thanks, Ravic. I'll just state, we can take a deeper look at the actual phasing at this intersection. It won't be dependent on this project, although the countdown signals will help us roll out that phasing, but we can do a timing audit on the length of time to cross and if there's methods that we can encourage the vehicles to yield. We did recently implement leading pedestrian intervals at a lot of intersections downtown to give pedestrians a 3-second head start before turning vehicles can get a green. So that does help, establish in the intersection and encourages better yielding, but I recognize that vehicles do not always yield appropriately. So we can take another look at this. Thanks.
Next question. Will this help pedestrian and bike traffic at the light on Gay Street leading to the National Aquarium? We've had a few guests and staff concerns because bike riders do not understand the red light is for them too.
Unfortunately, this particular project focused on the 3 intersections of Pratt Light, Pratt Calvert, and Pratt President. But I guess that is something that could be looked at a later date.
Thank you. And the last question we have is, how will the bike path be differentiated from the pedestrian sidewalk? As a blind pedestrian, I do not want to inadvertently walk in the bike path.
Well, I'm sure with the adjustments in the configuration of the adjusted ramps, there should be a way where you could kind of guide yourself better to differentiate between the two, if I understand the question correctly.
We'll give them a moment to clarify in the chat if did not suffice.
Okay.
I'll move to the next question. As I am blind, I am not able to visually observe your plan and you haven't described it. So did I understand correctly that if I were to use the ramp, one in walking or wheeling into the middle of the intersection? One ends up walking or wheeling into the middle of the intersection.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. As I am blind, I'm not able to visually observe your plan and you haven't described it. So did I understand correctly that if one were to use the ramp, one ends up walking or wheeling into the middle of the intersection?
No, that's not, I wouldn't say that would be possible for that to happen.
Thank you. Any more questions in the room?
This is Clea again. I just wanted to comment that the addition of the audible pedestrian signals should help with the orientation into the intersection. If one is at the button, that would then give the correct direction, like indicate the correct direction across the street. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I live downtown. Oops, sorry. I was going to ask, since you did mention there will be lane closures, right? And there's a very critical bus lane that runs on, I'm a public transit user, very critical bus lane that runs on Pratt. Will you maintain, even through lane closures that happens to impact the bus lane, will you maintain a dedicated bus right of way? In the project to avoid bus congestion and reducing on-time performance and reliability.
Yeah, we're communicating with MTA in that regard, so we'll definitely have those logistics figured out.
Thank you.
Any additional questions in the room?
Okay. First off, name is Kylie Lewis. I live in the Northwest. I'm asking about specifically the pedestrian signals. Will they have a timer on whenever there's a walk signal, similar to how it is in Washington, D.C., in a near term, at least?
Yeah, they should have a timer on them to kind of guide you on that.
And as a long-term, but will there be extra studies into possible pedestrian-only phases in the light cycle? So like a scramble crossing. Specifically just an idea that came up for Light and Calvert intersections is scramble crossings with pedestrian-only signals as a long-term idea.
I can get back to you on that, and I'll direct you to the website with your question, and we can probably address it at a later date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna Mabry. I live up the street in Mount Vernon and don't drive, so I experience these intersections as a pedestrian. And I think I may have already had my question answered about, will we upgrade the protection and prioritization of pedestrians? I mean, the audible walk signals and bright paint is great, but as someone else mentioned, people or cars fly through the crosswalk pretty fast and they're supposed to yield, but they don't. And are there going to be any upgrades of friction or any other kind of protection or prioritization as part of, I don't know, downtown rise and other kind of walkability stated goals, I guess?
I mean, that's something we can look into. As far as this particular project, we didn't address that in conjunction with Downtown Rise, but we could probably.
I read about the Vision Zero and the near miss tracker being part of the influence for making these changes. So
No, those are two separate projects.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions online in the chat?
There is one. This is a complex intersection, especially at Calvert, Light, Pratt. The issue of audible signals and placement of tackle indicator are critically important to us.
That was a question or a statement?
Could be a suggestion, maybe, I don't know.
The question, I apologize if I'm being rude and just unmuting without permission, but the question that I was trying to ask with that in the chat is, two of us who are blind here have asked questions, and I think there are three of us actually who are here who are with the National Federation of the Blind. I'm the president of the local chapter. And while we appreciate the answers that we've received tonight, I was thinking I gave my email address in the chat, and maybe a separate meeting with us or even a call would be super helpful if that can be arranged. So that's instead of taking up the time that everybody else's questions. You've kind of come close to answering our questions tonight, and I realize we can submit through the website as well, but I think a conversation might be in order.
We'll make sure that gets arranged.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're very welcome. Any other?
There are no additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So that will conclude our meeting tonight regarding the Anna Harbor Intersection Improvement Project. Just want to thank the liaison team for setting this up. Thank you all for your time. And again, any other questions from tonight, streetsofbaltimore.com/Anna Harbor, streetsofbaltimore.com/Anna Harbor. Thank you.